Crash and smash and bash and thrash, cut and thrust and hack and slash, stab and jab and rip and tear, hook and rend beyond repair. Today we're going to talk about damage types for various weapons. Hey friends, Lauren here again, and to follow up on last week's video where I was talking about, describing fights as seasoning up your combat and adding flavor to your descriptions, I thought I'd talk about types of damage that weapons do. Because a weapon doesn't necessarily just fall into one category, it can do different things. I mean, a mace, sure, we say crushing damage. Although, flanges on a mace are also, they can pierce a little bit. Now if you take a firm enough squash or gourd, I mean, a desiccated pumpkin that's kind of soggy and rotting, this isn't going to work so well. It's very spongy, very bouncy. But you might get little puncture marks as well as a crushing action from it. So a mace, we can say, okay, blunt crushing damage. But what if we moved on to a warhammer? Well, yeah, it has a crushing side, but historically speaking, warhammers also have a piercing side. They can puncture. They can penetrate. They can dig deep into something. So you could crush with one side, you could puncture with the other. So it can do two types of damage. The benefit of having a weapon that can do multiple types of damage is that, I know there are role-playing games and stuff where, a creature's resistant to one type of damage. Well, hey, flip it around. It does the other type of damage. And, they feel a little bit different depending on how you're holding it. If you really know what you're, if you've got a lot of experience, you've practiced with it a little bit, you can kind of tell, which end is the spike, which end is the hammer, the way it just kind of bounces back in your hand. But, point being, it's about the same weight no matter which way you swing it. So, if this does 1d8 of, crushing damage, maybe this does 1d6 or 1d8 of, piercing damage. As an example, using a d20 system with damage dice. There we go. It's going to do a serious wound. So, yeah, it could be used against armor, but it could also puncture into something at the same time. What about a hand axe? Common weapon. A lot of games, whether it's the, foes, maybe the bandits have them, maybe your character has it as a offhand or backup weapon. Well, yeah, okay, it hacks. It hacks into a target, or it slashes or slices even. Mostly slashing damage, we would say. But you can thrust with the tip. It is turned up for a reason. And, it gives it a wider cutting surface to slice into the target. But you can technically sharpen that and thrust into a target with it. So maybe if you were rolling damage, so you did your attack and your damage was very low, maybe all you did was clip with the point. So you did a little piercing damage with it. A dagger, mostly piercing damage. So this is going to puncture. This is going to dig real deep into the target. You can still cut with it. You could still slash if that's what was needed. So maybe you're having trouble like that, but you can still slash. And I've tested, this is a Todd Stuff Rondel dagger. I've tested it against the cabbage, and it does slice quite well through the cabbage. So it can be quite useful. Moving on to swords, because, hey, we all like swords. Swords are best. I have the sharp long sword down here. Do keep in mind, you can use the pommel as a blunt striking object. But a lot of swords, particularly 14th and 15th century, are cut and thrust swords. Look at this point. Look at it. See if we can get it close to the camera there. That is a thrusting point. That means this sword is good for both cut and thrust. So you could slash and pierce with it. So in your games, long swords are probably going to be popular. A lot of games, some of them, you use them one-handed or two-handed. Some of them, it's a dedicated two-handed sword. But you can cut and thrust with it. So it has multiple functions. And speaking of multiple functions, what about the poleaxe? Because the poleaxe has all three. So if you have a game that has three types of damage, generally slashing, piercing, and crushing, well, we have a slashing edge, we have a piercing edge, we have a crushing edge. So sharp, stabby, blunty, we've got all the types of damage, and on a real poleaxe, you probably have a back spike as well. So 2 ways to pierce with it. Plus you can cut. Plus you can bash. So all those adjectives in the beginning, the poleaxe pretty much does it all. I am a big fan of poleaxes. Oh, it's quite big. I'm trying to get it back in camera. And there it is. Now, of course, this is a training version, so it's got safety cap. It's rubberized. It's not gonna, you know, do more than bruise someone. But on a real one, yeah, it's business. And maybe your game doesn't have a wide variety of polearms. If it has spears do some cutting and slashing, but mostly are good for thrusting. But if you have a halberd, it does cutting, it does thrusting. You can even do special moves like hooking with it, like the back. And some poleaxes are a hammer and a back spike that can puncture or hook as well. So there are a lot of options. So when you think about a weapon and interpreting the roles for attacking and damaging, you can kind of say, oh, that was just I only was able to get in a small thrust, and it only did a few points of damage. Or, oh, I did a really big crushing blow that I did and rolled for maximum damage, so I used the hammer side to really crunch into someone. So we can change that up. So when you're running your games, just think about the type of damage that a weapon can do, and that can really help change the description. So if you really want to immerse yourself into the storytelling of the game, and you want to talk about what weapons do, well, you can. Some weapons, like a Viking sword, above me there, maybe that's mostly for slashing. If we move over to a more 13th century style of sword, right up there, now we start to add a bit of thrusting. We get into the 15th century with the long sword, and we're getting a lot more thrusting ability, but we can still cut with it as well. So we can fight people in armor and out of armor. Things become more functional. So in the setting of your game, weapons should have multiple features. Now it's hard to code into a video game, and you know, you'd have to always have toggles and switches on the fly. It would be really complex. But in your role-playing games, you can definitely say the type of damage that my weapon does could be mainly this category, let's say slashing, but it's got a hammer on the other side of it, or it's got a puncturing spike on the other side of it. So, you know, a horseman's axe slashes, but it also pierces if you need to use that. So just a little rant from me about how you can, again, flavor up those games and the descriptions for how the weapons do their damage, just as important as how you land your attack. So if you're really telling the story with your group around the table, you can flavor it up with lots of great adjectives on how the weapons, you know, do their damage. What type of damage is it? Crunchy, slicey, stabby. Maybe it does all three, like our friend the poleaxe. Anyway, thanks friends. Appreciate you tuning in as always. Do remember, like, subscribe, and most importantly, comments, because comments help shape the content of the channel. Do take care. Do stay safe. And when a problem comes along, you must stick it. I don't really know how to end this video. I'm just rambling. So have a good day. Bye.